Douglas Stewart with the Coalition for Smarter Growth will talk about opportunities to expand transportation options to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Virginia. Douglas.
Good afternoon. I'm a resident of Fairfax City, actually, not Fairfax County, but we've lived here for 15 years and we've seen really good things happening here. So just speaking personally, there are a lot of great things happening in Fairfax that we're experiencing, and I'm here to talk about how we could accelerate those things. I want to thank Supervisor Storck for those great introductory comments, really set an ambitious agenda, and also thank Supervisor McKay for his leadership on transportation and smart growth. The Board of Supervisors and Supervisor McKay and others are really a big reason behind all the progress we've made. So the first message I have is a very simple one. Each one of us is a transportation solution by the choices we make. Now those choices can be, they can have to do with the kind of vehicles we drive, cleaner vehicles. They can also obviously have to do with how we get around. We could choose, or we could walk or bicycle or use an assistive device, or take the bus or the train for more of our trips. What I'm mainly here to talk about, though, is community design, and why more of us can't do those things, and how we can change that. So I'm speaking today for the Coalition for Smarter Growth, which is led by Stewart Schwartz, who wasn't able to make it here today because he's taking care of his 90-year-old father. But I'm also a volunteer with the Virginia Sierra Club, so I'm going to really be talking about a lot of what the initiatives we've been working on in terms of promoting smarter growth and transportation choices. And have a PowerPoint, and we'll just, we can, if you want, we can just leave it right there and not worry about it, because sometimes they can distract, and I'm content just to talk to you. Fairfax County is undergoing a transformation, and it has been for the last, I'd say for the last 10 years, and it's continuing, and that is towards smarter growth development and expanding transportation options. Now, many of us, I assume that many of you, you drove here. Maybe some of you were able to walk or ride your bike. But it's not very easy to get around generally by walking or bicycling, as it is in maybe more urban parts of the region. That's starting to change, and I'm just going to give a little shout out for the Coalition for Smarter Growth, which started in 2002, developed something called the Blueprint for a Better Region, which was a vision of transit-oriented development focusing more growth around our transit stations. Those include VRE stations as well as metro stations. And at that time, when this idea was proposed about now 17 years ago, this idea was kind of, I'd say, laughable to many people in Fairfax County, including many people who sat on the board at the time. Even our congressman, our now congressman Jerry Connolly, who was then the chairman of the Board of Supervisors, was what I would characterize him as a skeptic. Well, leadership has changed, and that's partly because the market has changed, where what developers are building more of are walkable communities, where employers like Marriott and of course Amazon want to locate are in more walkable, transit-oriented communities. And those signals are really making themselves felt. But policy is also a huge factor in that. And Fairfax is really starting to come around toward this transformation, toward how we build our communities. So what I want to talk about a little bit is how do we accelerate the shift towards smarter growth? And first of all, just to make it clear, it's kind of intuitive, but building communities near transit that are more walkable and bicycle friendly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. If we can get around more often, walking, bicycling, taking the train, taking the bus, we are reducing greenhouse gas emissions. We know that. We also have proof. Communities, the Coalition for Smarter Growth did a study about 8 years ago showing the comparison between development in areas like near metro stations in Bethesda, Arlington, compared to development in Loudoun. If you put the same amount of people in say, somewhere in Loudoun County, eastern Loudoun County, Ashburn, where there isn't metro accessibility, or there wasn't, you had significant increase in greenhouse gas emissions in that scenario compared to a focused growth scenario. So by doing this, we are reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but we're also doing a whole lot of other good things. Karen Corbett-Sanders talked about One Fairfax and equity. We're making opportunities more equitable for people who can't afford to drive. It costs a lot of money to own and maintain a car. People who can't afford that have more opportunity when they live in places where their job is accessible by transit, where their bus service is better. And we also create communities of people where people are healthier, where we, as a matter of course, we can walk to the supermarket, we can bicycle to the supermarket. We are healthier that way. We don't even have to go to the gym necessarily. It's great if we can, but we're just healthier as a matter of everyday living. I want to give also Supervisor Storck does an annual bicycle tour of Mount Vernon. That's a great opportunity to see this area. Some of you may have participated. If we could bicycle every day, not just for a bike event, but just for everyday activities or walk, we are all better off and happier for it. I know if I can bicycle to work, I'm a lot happier than when I drive to it. So Fairfax County's comprehensive plan envisions putting 99% of future office, retail, hotel, and industrial development and 83% of its housing in walkable mixed-use areas. That is going to be a huge sea change, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. We are all part of making that happen. There are a couple different drivers for that. Transportation policy and investments, and land use are really the major ones. So I'm going to just grab something right now. The Coalition for Smarter Growth and Virginia Sierra Club last year developed something called Blueprint for a Better Region. A lot of times environmentalists are thought of as anti-growth. They don't want new roads. They don't want new housing. This is actually a vision of what we do want. So every project here, you can come up, and I have reports that I can I'll leave at the table. Every one of these projects are projects and investments in transportation that the environmental community says we do want. That includes a bus rapid transit on Route 1, and also more transit-oriented development along Route 1, so it's safer for people to walk and bicycle who live near the Route 1 corridor so they can get to those buses. That includes extending the Silver Line into Loudoun. It includes transit-oriented development in Loudoun County. It includes improved VRE service. Now, this is also more fiscally, another benefit is this is more fiscally responsible transportation policy than a policy that focuses on building and widening more roads as development goes further outward. So there are a lot of reasons for being behind this kind of an transportation investment package. There are transportation planning. You can all participate in making this happen, because another great thing that's happened is transportation planning is becoming much more citizen-centered and transparent than it was 20, 30 years ago. I grew up in New York State. The person who pretty much developed my area, Westchester County, Robert Moses, was a great builder and a great visionary in many ways, but he pretty much invented something called the authority. The Port Authority, for example. The authority in his day was something that collected a lot of money and basically made all the decisions about transportation. And it didn't matter if you didn't like it. It didn't matter what was going to happen. Well, we have now something, the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority. They're also an authority. They get about $250 million a year in transportation funding through different tax sources to spend in Northern Virginia. This is an authority that's actually accountable to you through your elected leaders on the board, Chairman Boulevard currently, and other elected leaders throughout the region. And you can influence the decisions they make about funding transportation. That's also true at the state level. The Virginia Department of Transportation has something called the Smart Scale program that scores transportation projects evaluates them, but they also have public hearings. They'll have a public hearing in April about the transportation projects they're reviewing. You can come out and support those projects. And closer to home, I would say, first just about land use, we think growth is a good thing. Well, growth is inevitable. Let's put it that way. And where we grow is very important. We cannot be against growth. We have to look at supporting growth in the right places. So I would, really put a kind of plant an idea to really try to support growth where that enables people, that's more walking, bicycle friendly. And this area, in Fairfax, many of those areas are near future transit stations and compact development. Where we can talk about Merrifield, Tyson's Corner, and also Route 1. Last, I just, a perfect, real kind of great example of where this is happening is right here, or nearby along the Route 1 corridor, through the Embark Richmond Highway process. There is funding for bus rapid transit, but there still needs to be more funding, and there needs to be smarter growth along that area. There will be a meeting on January 23rd on the Embark Richmond Highway BRT project at Mount Vernon High School. Come out and support that because that is a greenhouse gas climate solution. And also just say we have elections coming up, both local elections and all the state seats. And that is a huge. There'll be a lot of competitive elections here in Fairfax. That's a huge opportunity to educate candidates about more climate-friendly transportation and expanding transportation options, because it's really your local elected leaders who are making those decisions. I guess Fairfax is a great place to live. It's incredible the kind of how tolerant this county is, how diverse. It's a wonderful experience to be able to live here and to have our child grow up in a place where he's really living in the world. Literally, almost. And we also have an opportunity, I think as Supervisor Storck said, to lead on climate through continuing to expand transportation options. Thank you.